don't take too many chances. I don't put a lot of faith in stuff online. I'm very hesitant about that. But
that's reasonable, I think, with everything happening, right?
yeah, but I can't stress to anybody that wants to, like I said, I tell everybody about this program. Everybody I can. I've told my doctors so they can pass it on to some of their patients. I think your program is just great.
Hi everyone, this is Nassia Davos and welcome to this episode of Ask an Ex. Every Ask an Ex episode features an inspiring ex-smoker who succeeded with the CBQ method and who shares their personal experience and unique perspective on quitting smoking. The ex I have with me today joined our CBQ program and quit smoking after 42 years on the 9th of September 2021, and he's here to tell you how he did it. Please welcome Roy Stark. Roy, thank you so much for being here and huge congratulations on quitting smoking over a year ago.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here with you.
Great. I cannot wait to learn more about your story and this journey and what happened up until now. Can you tell me a bit about how did you start smoking? How much did you smoke? How did your journey into smoking started?
Well, it was kind of interesting. I was involved in a theater group and in high school, and my character had to smoke a pipe. And so I started smoking a pipe during rehearsals and in the play. And my dad was a big smoker. Okay, so I grew up around it and everything, but I got hooked. And I wasn't a heavy smoker, but as we all know, smoking period is bad, regardless of how much. Yeah. And I just had a real hard time putting it down because I'm a very antsy character, if you will. I had to keep busy. And then I had a job that curtailed a lot of downtime, catching airplanes, waiting for, as we talked earlier, presentations and break times and stuff like that. Well, what do? You smoke a cigarette. Yeah. And then, I just could never put it down. In the 90s, I put it down for 2 years by using the patch until I figured out how to cheat with the patch.
How?
Okay. You take the patch off, have a cigarette, put the patch back on, that sort of thing. Right.
I see.
And so, then I got stressed out and I started smoking again. And it wasn't until here lately, I found your program and I fell in love with it. I liked it very much because, as you stated, it allowed me to quit when I was ready to quit. But I also knew I had to work the program. And because I'll be honest with you, Nazia, I did not think you could get me to quit in 10 days. I did not believe that. And I am so glad you proved me wrong. I really am.
Great. But, I always say you proved yourself wrong because, like you said, you put the work, you committed to the program, you really worked the program. So the program is a tool, but you got yourself to the finish line and beyond. So it's all thanks to you.
Well, again, it was something that was very difficult for me in regards to, as you kind of alluded to, that, I've been sober for a long time. And you would think that
I think like
35 years.
30, wow.
35 years.
Congratulations.
Thank you. It's a pretty good accomplishment, I think.
Yeah, of course.
So much, I don't even think about it anymore. But what bothered me more than anything was the fact that I knew how to do 12 steps, right?
Yeah.
And that 12 steps is not only a program for recovery, but it's a program for life, as you well know, right? Mm-hmm. But I couldn't do it with cigarettes. I could not do the 12 steps with cigarettes until your program. And
And,
boy, I mean, go
yeah,
ahead.
being sober for 35 years, it is a huge accomplishment. And I wanted also to ask you, because you tried to quit smoking following the 12 steps, and the 12 steps work for alcohol. This is undeniable. In your experience and in your view, how was the CBQ program similar and different from the 12 steps of AA?
Okay, it it was your program and the way you presented the medical aspect of
Mhm.
it. In AA, now I'm sure it's all changed. It's, because it's been a long, long time,
Okay,
right?
that's fine.
And I'm sure they have different methods now. But back when I was going through it, it was, you work the steps and the steps treat you to be a better human being and to, preoccupy yourself and realizing that abstinence is not a bad thing, right? With your program, what I found really hard was, number one, I'm an addict alcoholic by nature,
Mhm.
but the addiction with nicotine, I I really found through your program was far more superior than the addiction of alcohol. Okay, in alcohol, we talked about the little enzyme in our brain and how it's the lion's asleep. Well, you touched on that, but yours was more a behavioral thing because being a smoker, I get up in the morning and have a cigarette and a coffee. I do a task, I have a cigarette.
Yeah.
I drove to the store and back, I had a cigarette. Well, I didn't do that with alcohol. I didn't have a drink every time, first thing I get up in the morning or anything like that, right? So, I mean, comparing the two is totally different. Your program really taught me how to change my behavior more than anything.
I see what you mean. Because smoking becomes part of every little aspect of our lives more more easily than alcohol does. So it has a stronger, sometimes behavioral component, but the mental addiction and the mental aspect of it, I think it's strong anyway. And I also wanted to point out, and tell me if I'm wrong with this, that when we quit alcohol and we're already smokers, we sometimes rely on smoking even more to let go of alcohol. So we quit alcohol, and then this leads us to rely on smoking even more, and it becomes that crutch that it's harder to let go of. It's the last thing, let's say. Was that the case for you, or no?
Well, no, you're absolutely dead on. Because if I got up, you and I meet each other in a hotel, right? You're walking out to your car and I'm outside smoking a cigarette. You don't think twice, right? Passing me by. But if I was standing out there with a shot of whiskey or a bottle of Jack Daniels, you'd kind of cock an eyebrow at me,
Hmm.
this early in the morning. So whenever you had a cigarette, it wasn't a big deal. And you're right. What I've found now is all my crutches are gone, Nazia. I don't have a crutch anymore.
How does that feel?
It's bewildering. But
Mhm.
I will say this, that it makes me concentrate more on the matters at hand. You know, um, I don't go out and waste time having a cigarette. I enjoy moments more. That's probably the biggest thing. I'm not missing anything anymore, or I'm not feeling guilty because I snuck outside to have a cigarette.
Mm. Yeah,
You know what really did it for me in your program?
tell me.
My hardest part with your program was get up in the morning and do not have a cigarette for an hour. I was like, oh, I can't do this. There's no way. There's no way, right? I have my coffee. I got to have my cigarette. When I did that, and I realized, holy crap, coffee tastes really good. I never knew it tastes that good. And then you talked about how they don't make sweeteners with nicotine. There aren't perfumes with nicotine. Just it all clicked. And
Yeah.
once I got past that morning coffee without a cigarette, ballgame.
That was it. So that was your aha moment, that you showed to yourself that it can be done. I can do
Mhm.
it.
Yeah. The 10th day that you talked about, you will put out your cigarette.
Yeah.
I lit mine and then instantly put it out.
Wow. You were
Yeah.
done.
I was ready.
Yeah.
I was ready. So,
That's incredible. Congratulations. What a nice story. And I want to ask you more about this morning cigarette, because it's such a huge fear and obstacle for some people. So how did you take yourself from thinking that there is no way I can have my coffee without a cigarette, to actually doing it? Did you do it in one day? Did it take you many days? How did you talk to yourself to experience this 1 hour without feeling deprived? How did you do it?
well, I've been categorized as very intense and stubborn.
Okay.
Okay. But people also call me a good soldier.
Mm.
And what it was I'm in Nazia's program, and Nazia says this is what I need to do. So like a good soldier, I followed it. Now I did have an advantage of the fact that I worked for a company. We had company cars. You couldn't smoke in company cars.
Mhm.
Okay. That's a huge trigger for a lot of people.
Yeah.
They get in the car but I would already gotten to the point where, I pull off to a rest stop or whatever, because I used to travel 13 states
Mm.
in my job. So I did a lot of road. And so I got used to, getting out of the car and having a cigarette.
Yeah.
The morning coffee deal, I told myself, number one, you told me we were going to quit in 10 days. That's what got me to be with your program.
Okay.
Okay. Because I'm very skeptical about online programs and everything like that, right? But it was just like 10 days. I got to do this. I got to do this. I had an issue with my leg.
Mhm.
I had blockage that was due to plaque and everything like that. And my doctor told me, you have to quit smoking or you're going to lose that leg.
Yeah.
So there was that incentive. Okay. So we get to your program, and I knew I wanted to do it in 10 days. And I kind of started that trying to back off the coffee thing about 7 days in.
Mm.
Okay. About the 7th day I started, it was like, it was like, okay, because that's a big trigger for me.
Yeah.
And then, and I think that was the other thing that you said, and, you can stop me from blabbering on or anything, but, what really got me too was your exercise and finding out what triggers you. And I guarantee you just about every smoker out there will say the same thing that I said. Everything triggered me.
Yeah.
And so it was like, okay, then I had to go, what's my biggest trigger? And then, I believe you said that in your program too, find that main trigger. And that was my coffee in the
Wow.
morning.
Hmm. And you thought about removing coffee from your life?
Yeah. I did that. I stopped, that was another thing that had to do with health issues. I was having too much caffeine and blah, blah, blah. So I just, people were shocked that I just dropped caffeine and I didn't even have headaches. I just stopped. Yeah, I just stopped it. Now, I haven't maintained that. I've gone back to, having a cup of coffee with caffeine, but I have one. I just have one.
Yeah.
I used to drink a pot and a half a day, but
yes, and without smoking, our body doesn't need as much caffeine to produce the same effect.
No, taste,
Yeah.
like I think that was the biggest shock was I actually tasted coffee for the first time in 40 plus years. Think
Wow.
about that. That's crazy,
Yeah.
So
So during the program, you really, first of all, you had the motivation, you had the incentive, and even though you were skeptical that it's an online program or that it's quitting smoking in 10 days, you really said, I'm going to do this as instructed. I will do my best and I'll see what happens. And I think that's so important, to give all of you in that process, and that you and invest in yourself so you can get the result you want. And it's my advice to anyone who may be taking the program or taking any endeavor to just commit, do your best, and see what happens. Have your motivation and do your best. So that you're a great example of that.
Well, thank you. You know, like I said, it was your program and the very positivity that and your presentations, you made me want to succeed. Okay, you backed it up with science, you backed it up with tricks. I mean, one of my favorite tricks, my granddaughter just laughed about it all the time because Papa would walk around with a cut off straw,
Yeah.
you know, and because I never thought about that. You know, why do we love a cigarette? You know, it's that first intake. And so I use that straw a lot afterwards too.
Yeah.
And I
Because
thought that
it's
was
the
I thought that
breathing.
was the greatest trick in the world. It really
Yeah.
was.
Yeah. Because it's the breathing that relaxes us, not the
Mhm.
cigarette. So yeah,
Right.
that's a good one. And
Yeah.
and Roy, before you decided to invest in this program, when you first find out about the CBQ method, what attracted you? What made you choose the CBQ method over another approach?
Well, like I stated earlier, it was the 10 days.
Okay.
Because not only am I intense and stubborn, I'm also very impatient. Okay. You know, so it was like, okay, 10 days, let's see. And then, you know, I'll be honest with you, you know, it was watching, you know, that introductory, your introductory, your presentation, your talk about it and everything like that is just like, I didn't feel I needed to look any further. I
Okay.
thought, okay, this program has what I need. It's scientifically backed. Okay. She's an ex-smoker, so she knows what she's talking about. Okay. She's got all these degrees. I can't even name them all, right? You know, so she got to be pretty smart. Okay. So that's what did it for me. More than anything was the 10 days and your presentations. That's what did it for me.
Well, I'm glad you decided to join and you trusted the process, and that you succeeded and that you are here now over a year later sharing your story. I mean, you must be so proud of yourself, and your family must be proud of
Well,
you, right?
you know, it went fast. It really went fast. I mean, I couldn't believe it had been a year,
Yeah.
you know, but yeah, it's good. It really is. I was a pack a day smoker, always have been. Never more than a pack, never less than a pack for some reason. Okay. And so, and I think I don't again, it was a combination of the doctor telling me, you know, about my leg.
Yes.
You
This must
know,
have been scary, right?
well, yeah, it was actually it was kind of weird. You know, but because I love to walk and I doing everything, and then all of a sudden it was just like I wasn't getting any feeling in my right foot.
Okay.
And I mean, I still could walk on it, but it felt like I was dragging around a club. And so they went in, you know, then he talked about, of course, you know, I don't know too many doctors that are for smoking. So naturally he just, you know, pounded that in my head. And fear is a great motivator, you know. And then I just went on stop smoking and there you were. And I clicked on it. And like I said, I don't take too many chances. I don't put a lot of faith in stuff online. I'm very hesitant about that. But
That's reasonable, I think, with everything happening, right?
yeah, but I can't stress to anybody that wants to, like I said, I tell everybody about this program. Everybody I can. I've told my doctors so they can pass it on to some of their patients. I think your program is just great, but it was worth it. You know, the journey and the exercise and you mentioned it, you know, just do the work and you'll quit. Your program's fantastic, I think. you know.
Well, thank you so much, and thank you for sharing. How was your experience with that? When it comes to withdrawal, how was your experience with the withdrawal?
Well, you know, that's the funny thing is I'm not sure I had it. I took one day at a time from the old program. And then we had a saying back then too, you know, one day at a time, hour to hour, minute to minute, heartbeat to heartbeat.
Nice.
That's what we do, you know, you sit there and you and breathe. I mean, that's the biggest thing, breathing,
Yeah.
you know.
Yes.
So
Yes, and I think that's great advice. This one day at a time, even one heartbeat at a time. It's just step by step. Because when you have to think about forever, it's too much. But taking it step by step, of course, you can manage the next moment. And if you just focus on that, so I think that's great advice for anyone who may be listening.
yeah.
And how? So you didn't have any withdrawal. That's incredible. And
Not that I can pinpoint.
yeah, well, that's good enough, isn't it? If it didn't bother you, or
I'll take it.
that's the point, right? Even if, because withdrawal is your body detoxing and healing, so it did happen. But if it didn't bother you or didn't cause you discomfort, well, that's the point, and that's incredible, because you were smoking for 42 years. So quitting smoking and not being bothered by the withdrawal, which is a big fear for many people, is huge. And it's all because of the mindset you had while approaching that. Do you think, do you agree? Do you think there were other factors that allowed you to not be bothered or experience the withdrawal in a
Well, yeah, I think what's really helped too is I retired and then I quit smoking.
Okay.
Okay. So I didn't have I mean, I have a lot of downtime, but I don't have any stress, if you will. Okay. Like the travel with the job or,
Yeah.
and, so I'd take trips and everything like that. But again, like I said, I was so used to not smoking in the car. That wasn't a big deal. Now it was just, oh, now I don't have to stop. I can keep going.
Yeah.
But I think that did me a lot of good. Was, I didn't have any work pressures or anything like that. I just had, the family around and everything like that. And of course, they were going to protect me come hell or high water, and so I think that's what made it a little bit easier to get through it.
Okay, that's great. And you're now enjoying your retirement as the healthiest, freest version of yourself, right?
Right. And
No
I'll tell
pressure.
you what, the price of cigarettes went up quite a bit. I'm so glad that, I don't do that anymore. Right.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know,
yeah. But
because,
you don't have to allocate funds for that. And
well,
get
yeah, because I guarantee you that as you well know, you probably went through it too when you were quitting. It's just like, okay, if cigarettes get above $4 a pack, I'm quitting. If they get above $5 a pack, I'm quitting. Oh, if they get
and the price keeps rising, and
yeah. And so now it's just like, oh my gosh, because I used to have a buddy who was adamant. He lost his father due to lung cancer and all this, and he would always get on my case. Do you know how much money you're spending every year? And all this. So
yeah.
yeah, I know it. I know what they're going through. I do. Been there, done that, as you well know too.
Yes, and I think it's also important that many times loved ones or friends, they urge us to quit smoking, and it's not like we don't believe them or we don't know, but just has to click inside, and for us to be able and ready to take that step, right?
Right. Well, I'm gonna, if I may,
Of course.
I quit smoking, and I mean I quit drinking and ended up getting married and having two wonderful kids. Right. I mean, outstanding kids. And I quit smoking and I just married off my daughter last week.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you. And I have a granddaughter. And
Wow.
I had to laugh because her maid of honor says, I'm the biggest quitter of all. I quit drinking and I quit smoking. She said, there are not too many people that can quit like that. So, I mean, everybody out there, they're, you know, I don't know about them, but I had 3 good reasons to live, you know. Well, now 4 because I have a new son-in-law, you know. So
Amazing.
I'm glad I don't smoke. I don't have to worry about doing it around the grandbaby or anything like that. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So
So a lot of powerful motivations and reasons, and every time you quit alcohol or you quit smoking, your family grows. So you have such all these nice moments and people to keep you going, which is it's really nice. That's what life is
but
about, right?
right. Well, you know, and as you well know, you know, smoking, you miss out on things. We all, you know, you just miss out.
Yeah,
And now you don't have to miss out.
yeah,
And your program does that. I mean, for all the people out there that don't believe they can do it, I try her try Nasia's program. It works. It really works. So
well, thank you. That's thank you for sharing that, and it's important for people to hear that it can be done,
mhm.
and your life is not over after quitting smoking, which is what many of us believe. But great things happen after, and it can be done even if you've been smoking for a long time, even if you've been smoking a little or a lot, or even if anything, it can be done.
Mhm.
So yeah, and Roy, now that you went through the CBQ program, you quit smoking, a year passed. When you are looking back at this year, how do you feel that going through this process impacted your life overall?
Ooh. You know, in in AA, they always talk about promises will be fulfilled. Okay, when you quit drinking, they, you know, because like you stated, everybody believes that their life is like over because they can't drink anymore, or you know, oh my God, there's no way I can cope with anything without having a cigarette.
Yeah.
Um, I look back and I just think that quitting smoking, your program, AA, has taught me how to deal with everything and not get bent out of shape to where I got to go drink or have a cigarette, because that ain't going to solve anything. And it also tells me that no matter what you throw at me, I'm the biggest quitter of all. Okay. I can handle it no matter what. And I don't need a cigarette. I don't need a drink. I think there was another thing in your deal that really caught me was, why does this thing have control over me? It can't think, it can't speak, it can't, you know, I mean, just little things. And that's what I really loved. You gave me I love little tips to go on with life, you know. Um, but looking back, that was the biggest thing is, you know, your program, things that I have learned and everything, I realized that I could handle everything and everything is good. And I didn't need a cigarette to celebrate, to be despondent, anything. You know, I didn't need that. And I think that's the biggest joy, you know, because I'm like everybody. I walked into this saying, okay, you say 10 days, we'll see, you know. I can't do this. And I told you the biggest stumbling block was a dumb cup of coffee.
Yeah.
That was my Achilles heel. And the minute I knew I could do it, I mean, because I'd sit there and look at the clock, you know, and I'm having this coffee and it's like, I can kind of taste it. So, but yeah, looking back, I think it's just you realize what you've done, you know, and then things get better, you know. You don't have to worry about missing out on anything. You don't have to worry about smelling. You don't, none of that stuff. Your house doesn't reek. Your garage doesn't reek. Your car doesn't reek. So I don't know if I answered your question or not.
You absolutely did. Of course you did. Yeah. So life got better in every way, but also this trusting yourself that you will get yourself through anything because of you and not because of the attributed value to a drink or a cigarette or anything. And I think this is so important, having that inner knowing that I can handle it because I can handle it. So I love that you shared that. And I know it will resonate and help others who may be relying on smoking, which I think it's almost every smoker, to do certain things, from celebrating to coping with stress and all those things. I want to ask you, Roy, when you have, you said you retired, so you don't have so much stress in your life now, but when you have an emotionally tense moment, whatever that may be, how do you cope as a non-smoker?
You really want to know?
Yeah.
I go outside and throw a temper tantrum.
What does that mean?
Well, depending on what the situation is, I'll scream at the top of my lungs. I stomp my feet, and then I'm good. It's really kind of interesting. Whereas before, I'd sit and grab a cigarette and make a cup of coffee and sit and stress and play it. Now I just throw a temper tantrum. Not around. Nobody sees me. I mean, come on, that would look kind of weird. But I do. I go and I yell, I scream, I stomp my feet, and then I move on.
So it's cathartic, letting it out.
Exactly. Okay, so my daughter and I, our relationship is really, really tight. Mm-hmm. But what's really interesting is we could blow up at each other, and then 15 minutes later we're fine, like nothing ever happened. It's so you get it out. So stress is kind of the same thing. People work out, right? People go for walks, people go for runs. Well, I'm not a big runner, so I throw a temper tantrum.
Okay, so let it out. Don't keep it in and go to a cigarette. Just release it in any way that feels right.
Any way that feels right. I mean, my kids wanted to buy me a heavy bag to hang in the garage. Okay, I said, no, I'm a little bit old for that. I'll hurt myself. So, but that's how I kind of do it. And I also realized too that it's not that big of a deal. Okay, you will figure out a way. And I have not had, I mean, more people have told me I look healthier. I mean, my granddaughters noticed my fingers aren't yellow anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, your teeth, your skin color, I'm not ashen.
Yes.
Anymore, but I wouldn't let that stand in your way, people. I mean, because just like some people say, oh my God, you're so big, all this. I used to hear, oh my God, you're so skinny, you look like your bones, and it's just
So you needed to gain some weight.
Oh yeah.
So you can be at a healthy
right
weight.
I'm 6'1", and my weight is supposed to be between 170 190. Mm-hmm. I was 155.
I see.
Yeah, there was.
So it looks good on you, I think.
Well, thanks. I appreciate
what matters is health, right? And
oh yeah,
when you're at a healthy weight, people around you tell you look healthy. Your doctor confirmed you're at a healthy weight. I think this is what matters. And I agree with you that don't let that stop you, because you will figure it out. And as long as you don't replace smoking with food in a destructive way, right? Allow your body to adjust and figure out how to be healthy. And by adding exercise, treating your body right, eating the right things, you will eventually balance out to the weight that you need to be. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I mean, it just like I said, everybody just talk about all the time how much healthier I look,
Yeah, that's amazing.
and yeah, that's important.
Yeah.
We live longer now too. That's the thing, there's a reason to live,
Yeah, and how we live also matters. So living a healthy life with a good lifestyle, we're active. That's makes living even better.
hmm hmm
And Roy, what would you say to someone who may be in the position that you were, and they feel urged to quit smoking for any reason, and they don't believe it's possible, they don't believe it can be done, and they are skeptical of joining an online program, or they think it's not going to work for them? What would be your uh, advice and thoughts?
Well, I've never been a real big fan of, well, if I can do it, you can do it.
Mhm.
I've never been a fan of that. Okay. Because I don't know you. Okay. And you don't know me. And we could have two totally different personalities, which we do, and work ethics. But what I would tell that person is, for me, like I said, it was a scare tactic, if you will.
Mhm.
But I also knew in my mind I had to, because I have a granddaughter, and I could possibly have more grandchildren in the beginning, but later on down the road here. But the biggest thing is I would tell them is I'm the biggest skeptic in the world, but to trust this program. The old adage, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink, is very, very true. But if you are going to do this, you have to make up your mind that you are going to do it. You can't go in waffling. You can't go in half cocked. You have to work the program. It's like we always said in AA, it only works if you work it, right?
Yeah.
This program, I would tell them, is she means it. You will quit in 10 days if you work the program. But she's also not going to sit there and say, oh, you didn't quit in 10 days, if by chance you had a couple of days where you foundered. But you have to keep, and another AA expression is keep coming back, right? Okay.
Nice.
And that's what I would tell them is you got to want it. You got to do the work. Listen to what she says. It works. And yes, online, I'm the biggest skeptic there is. My kids, they get so frustrated with me, Nazia. It's just, Dad, you can do this. I don't want to, why do you read the paper? Why don't you read? I don't like reading it off the computer. I like the paper, So I'm a big skeptic when it comes to the internet. And your program, I mean, there were powers mightier than me. And I know I keep saying this, but you're fantastic. You make us feel very much, you're my friend, right? And you are walking me through this, and you are there for me, and your people that you have working with you, replying to emails, the support group, awesome. So yes, I would say, be committed, do this program.
Amazing. Roy, thank you so much. I I I'm really grateful. I thank you, and I appreciate that you took the time to be open and share your journey with honesty, and give to other people and help them and inspire them with your example. Your advice will help many other people, and especially those who may have let go of alcohol and feel more attached to smoking because of that. You're an inspiring example that it can all be done, that quitter is a good thing if you
Yes,
quit things
quitting.
that don't serve you. So you said
That's
that
right.
perfectly before. So I think it's really, really inspiring. So thank you.
Oh, no, thank you. Thank you very, very much. You've been super for me. Absolutely super. You made me do something that honestly, I didn't think I'd ever do. And I know there's a lot of people out there that can't believe I've done it, because they're like, oh, there's no way he's going to quit. But I
Well,
did
you did
through
it.
your program.
You did it.
So,
Well, Thank you. And if you're here watching this video, please leave a comment below and let Roy and I know what you're taking away from his journey, from his experience that can help you in yours. We're looking forward to reading your comments. Thank you for being here. Have a great day, and I'll see you next time.
All right. Thank you.